and they would be normally having what, 512 MB RAM or a 256 MB RAM. And today we talk about mobile handsets having 8 GB RAM, right? So if you look at the last 2 decades, your computing power has gone up tremendously. Computing and processing power has gone up tremendously. And also the storage cost, data storage cost has actually gone down. So this has helped in terms of accessing data and analyzing data much easier. And a lot of softwares have come up, and all the big players as well as the, medium and small players across the world, because they can store data cheaply, because they can access data cheaply. So that has given rise to a lot of software to analyze, this data and help organization and companies in terms of, understanding that, making sense of that, and use that for competitive advantage. Because competition is not staying at the same place. Competition is moving ahead, and the marketplace is becoming, more and more competitive. So in order to stay ahead in terms of in the industry, in the business, companies do not have an option but to use the data that they are collecting to actually analyze that and use it in terms of improving their product and services, in terms of understanding their customers better. Right? So data science and analytics actually helps us in our work. I mean, for example, today, if you look at, there are so many participants, and it's quite heartening to see that there are so many participants in, this session on a Saturday morning. And, how many people have joined, from where they have joined, how long, what kind of questions they are posing. And I'm sure, later part of the day, we will have the questions as well. So again, a lot of, chat messages, chat interaction, which is again, unstructured data. So wherever, whatever we do today, we are leaving our data footprint, right? So this is basically about understanding that data much better and use it for providing business values and benefits to, to the institutions and organizations. Do we have Professor Raman now? Okay, all right. So I'll continue. Maybe I'll give you a couple of examples so that the people who are on the call today understand what I mean by analytics and how it is used. So as part of Business Brio, we had worked on a telecom project for a telecom company in the Middle East. They're a telecom service provider like we have here Airtel. So they are also a telecom service provider in the Middle East and North African market. And we, used their customer feedback data to understand, looked at, how customers are using their services, different geographies, different demographics, profession, urban, rural, as well as how the service is performing, in terms of connectivity, data availability, different kinds of plans that they have, the usage. So one is the usage, the other is also the revenue. And, because we could use that data to understand not only what they are performing, as well as how they are benchmarked against their competitors. So how they're performing against their competitors, and give them very, important recommendations in terms of, where their service is weak, which all pockets their, the connectivity is weak, or the new offers that they have launched, how that is performing. So that analysis, which we did for close to 3 years, helped them in actually improving their, net promoter score. That's one of the measures that we had, as well as, the brand strength that we measured. Now, because of this, their net promoter score increased from, I think, 48 to about 68 in a quick span of 3 quarters. And that gave them a lot of, on the ground action points to improve their services and improve their standing against the competition, which they were doing, in different regions in the Middle East and North African market. And if you look at, in the telecom world, today, if you look at it, we use our mobile to actually look, surf the internet, look for information. So if that information can be mined in terms of what we are searching through our mobile phones, with the telecom service provider, then that information is a gold mine in terms of advertisers. They can use that information to find out who in the last 24 hours looked at SUV, and they can actually send targeted advertisements to them so that their cost of advertisement comes down. Instead of giving a lot of ads in the outdoor segment, they can actually send a lot of targeted ads, because who has really searched using with the telecom service provider, and that helps them in rifle shooting, like using a sniper, right? So that works well for the telecom service provider, because we all know that the last few years there was a lot of pricing pressure on them, right? So it gives them revenue. At the same time, the advertisers also gain, because they get very targeted audience at a lower cost.
Right.
Right. And maybe another example that I can think of is there are a lot of young young participants in the call today. So in terms of interviews, so when an applicant applies to a large company, so that process is normally like, you send an application, and then there are interviews and aptitude tests and so on. Now this organization, which is one of the world's largest FMCG companies, which is present in more than 40 countries and more than 400 plus FMCG popular brands. Now they actually wanted to use automate the entire hiring process with AI, data and AI. And what they did is that they actually the first step, once an applicant applies, they are asked to play online games, right? And in the online game, they track certain things like, say, your reasoning, your analytic skills, your logic, test for aptitude, appetite for risk. And then they use that data and an ML machine learning algorithm to assess suitability for roles applied against successful employees, in those roles. Right? And the next step is a video interview. So in the video interview of 30 minutes duration, they basically, answer to certain questions, which are already given to them. And there are, again, algorithms, and these are primarily natural language processing algorithm, which analyzes the phrases that an interviewer or applicant has used, their body language, tone, and then that gives each candidate a score. And based on the score, then the candidate goes through a face-to-face interview with the the HR recruiter from the organization. So in these two processes, online games and video interviews, it is eliminating the candidates checking their suitability. Mm-hmm. And not just an aptitude test, but a video interview, your body language, your enthusiasm, so your risk appetite and all. And based on that, a scorecard is generated. And based on that scorecard, then it's just decided that who goes to the next round, to the face-to-face recruiters interview. And the beauty also is that each candidate gets a feedback, what they did, where they did well, and where they didn't do well. And in that whole process, the organization could actually bring down hiring time from 4 months to 4 weeks. They could cover much more applicants in that time as well. And the HR recruiters' time in the organization, that fell down by 75% in terms of their time to review applications, which is like quite staggering. And it helped in, it helped in saving about $1 million each year globally in terms of recruitment costs to the FMCG company. And this is the power of data, because whether it is telecom service provider, customer feedback, that's again data, whether it is interviews, whether we're talking today, so that is data. So that is the power of data, if that can be used and harnessed the right scientific way.
Yeah, thank you, Soma, for wonderful insights. Shreedeep, can you just share with our students and the other industry guys about the student in terms of how they can build up required skills to keep themselves updated? And you can also share your organizational examples.
Sure. So thanks, Soma. That was quite insightful. Data is the new oil, I would say. So I completely agree with you. And I kind of appreciate what you shared. So I come from a product management background. I work as a product manager with a consulting giant. and day to day. So I'm going to talk about two particular aspects, then I leave it to audience to gather or ponder some thoughts on that. So the first thing which I wanted to talk about, how and why the ways of work are changing in the current industry. So I come from a financial services industry particularly, so I can talk more on that. But we need to understand here why the ways of working are changing. It's not about COVID or it's not about anything else. It's a change that has been in there and it's just getting catalyzed day by day. So to give some examples and to we have, as Soma rightly pointed out, we have so many young participants, and so we all are aware of three kind of generations that we have, right? We have millennials, and we have baby boomers, and then we have the generation next. So we are right now in the age of millennials, and millennials who are our big time customers, there is a lot of change in the way they want to experience things or they want to get things. So just to give an example, why this change in the work or why digital disruptions is breaking or disrupting or way it's kind of changing the way financial services is working. So if I have to give you a good example, three companies that comes to my mind: Ola, Uber, and Airbnb. Now, what do you see one thing common in all of this? So one thing which is common, I mean, you can of course have a thought about it, but one thing which is the common factor which stands out of these three companies is in terms of they are all founded or they got all founded in the age of recession of 2008 to 10. I mean, 2008 Uber, if I'm not wrong, 2010 Ola, and somewhere around
Yeah.
in 10 and 11 Airbnb. So these are the companies which actually changed the way the business used to operate. I mean, that was in pertains to taxi servicing or in terms of tourism and hotel. At that moment in time, financial services was busy in kind of handling the regulations which the regulators were putting on. So we had this recession in 2008 because of the real estate boom that happened, or the bubble which happened in US. So they were busy at that time handling or addressing those regulations. At the meantime, at that moment, these other companies actually started working on how the customer is looking in terms of service and how what kind of areas they are trying to explore. So just to give an example, today millennials are expecting things at fingertips. They don't want to visit a retail bank or probably make a payment, stand in the queue. They don't want it. They want things at fingertips. I mean, if you ask me today, from my background or from my experience, I mean, I have clients who talk to us like, why don't you build something like Amazon has done? Why don't you build something for us like, let's say, for Amazon comes prominent, let's say other companies like, for example, Ola or Uber has. Why can't we have that technology inbuilt in our infrastructure? So those are the questions that we address. And the reason for that is because customer expectation and customer demands are changing day by day, and it's very radical and dynamic. So that is one aspect, and that is the one key reason that we see that why this disruption is happening, or I would say this digital disruption. And the other important aspects apart from customer expectations are in terms of cost cutting technologies. So as a product manager, when we look into the problem statements or when we get different kind of use cases from our client, the most important factor that they touch upon is the cost cutting. What are the cost cutting technologies that are there in the market? How can we integrate that to our solution? So one important aspect which I want to touch upon is cloud computing, because there could be a question that, I mean, what different this new startups or this fintech companies do, and what makes the cost go down when compared to a big giant like, let's say, take the example of HSBC or Citibank. For example, compare that with if you guys have heard about a name called Monzo Bank in UK, which is a fintech bank, and that is actually working on some unique capabilities in terms of providing banking features to their client. It's a kind of a challenger bank. You call it a neo bank. These are different terms in the market. But why is it cost effective? So the one important reason, there are many reasons. So one reason which I want to highlight is something we all aware of. We have come across something called cloud computing. Now, cloud is changing the way business operates. And why it's so? Because nobody wants to, wants to hold the data center or the premises or the infrastructure on premises. They're actually looking to move it to the cloud. And the reason being, because cloud is cheap, number one. Cloud is effective, cloud is secure. And why do I say this? Because a simple example, if you are running any services on cloud for your bank, it's the amount of time in which you are using the space in cloud and the day or the time you are using, that decides your cost factor. So it comes down to very cheap. So if you are using 5 days a bank and you want to host the services, let's say a retail bank logs into his account and checks his balances or do some transaction, and you want to host that service for 5 days maybe or for a particular time, you can do it. You will be charged only for that. So the cloud space provider, the big cloud space providers, if you I guess most of us are aware here, we have AWS, Microsoft, and Google. AWS is Amazon Web Services. So the charging or the fee structure is focused on how much you use and when do you use. So that is kind of a bringing a cost dimension to the entire infrastructure cost, which is a big, I would say, a cost pocket in the cost barrier in the pocket of a client. Because IT, if you see from a banking perspective, that's the most costly affair for any bank. And this shift, this migration from premises to cloud is kind of helping the banks to revive their business structure and of course bring down the cost, and in turn benefit the end user, because when the cost is reduced, it actually get passed to the customer, end customer. And that is why this retail bank, this challenger banks which are working as a fintech right now are kind of capitalizing on this. And our big banks like big giants, I just named HSBC and Citi, kind of ramping it up, because they know if they don't act now, they don't change the way the business model right now, they probably may fade out maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. But they have to change. Change is important. And the important two key things, digital disruptions and customer expectations, are the key drivers which are actually shaping up the entire industry. And of course financial services, since I come from that background, so I quoted my example from there. But financial services is heavily disrupted by these two factors.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Sushant, can you just share your insight?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, sir. And thank you, Soma and Shrideep, for the wonderful insights. I come from a little different background. I'm from trading and risk management background. So I've been in this business of analytics for the last almost 12 or 13 years. And I too am an end user. Like, I'm not into development or anything. I'm like an end user of these analytics, and have changed. I've seen the world change drastically with all these advancements in technology combined with analytics, I'll say. So in trading terms, if I have to say that, today there are more than half of the transactions, more than half of the transactions in the stock market are driven by automated trading, which are based on different analytics. So this is actually the power that we are talking about, the change that data and analytics can bring when they're combined with technology. So when I started my career in 2008, this wasn't the case. It's like, the traders had to punch in their orders, and we really cannot compare those things with the power that we have right now. A trader can max punch in, say, 1,000 orders a day. Even that is on the very higher side. When we compare that with these automated tradings, it is like they can punch in more than 1 crore orders per day based on different analytics. So that is a change that I have seen in my world, which is driven majorly by analytics. there are a couple of more things which I would like to talk about. There is like one being the normal misconception which a lot of people have with respect to analytics taking away their jobs, and also about the growth of analytics as a whole in like in the future at of workplace. So I'll give you one analogy here as well. Like when I was in my engineering college in say early 2000s, a lot of people used to believe that IT was the new thing at that time. So a lot of people used to believe that IT would take away a lot of most of the current jobs at that time, and they were not wrong. They were right, but there was a caveat to that. Like uh, more than like IT introduced a lot more new roles and profiles in the market than it actually took away. The number of new jobs that were introduced by IT clearly outnumbers the total job number of jobs that it took away. I mean, you talk about the biggest companies in the world right now. You would discuss about say Apple. You discuss about Microsoft, Amazon, Google or Alphabet, Facebook, Alibaba. So all these are like, one common thing between all these companies are all are driven by IT or analytics or, that zone. So uh, it is like, it is not only that, I mean, it is bringing in a lot of new opportunities as well. There are, millions of people who are working in these companies. And from Indian markets perspective, we do have some big names like, we have Infosys, Wipro, TCS, uh, Tech Mahindra, HCL, Hexaware. There are a number of companies, and they do provide a lot of quality jobs in the market, and they have set a very high standard for themselves, and they are the best paymasters as well. So uh, you know like these companies, there are thousands and thousands of other companies in literally each and every corner of the world. So imagine the number of jobs that they have added. That is like, that is literally humongous. So I feel that technology and analytics definitely go hand in hand. They are very strongly correlated, and on the same lines, analytics too in the future they would be adding many more jobs than it would definitely take away, or like, there would be it would be definitely in many more multiples. I mean, in my context as well, if I have to speak in terms of this change, the work that I do currently, it did not even exist when I was in school. Uh, I have a job of my liking right now, but because all this is because of these advancements in technology and analytics. I'm into risk analytics field. So like me, there are other millions of people who are settled in this in some field or the other, which are driven by analytics, big data, data science. I mean, these profiles did not even exist around 15 to 20 years ago. So that is like, that is what we are looking at. I think as far as analytics is concerned, there is a bright future um, when it gets combined with these advancements in technology, and they'll definitely add a lot of quality jobs. Also, with respect to Indian context, now I think because of COVID, a lot of people are working from home, and we see that uh, you know where we are located matters so much less now. It is like, if a person is working from home, then it actually doesn't matter if there's no difference if the person is located in New York or London or Mumbai. It really doesn't matter. Uh, the cost of people do. I mean, if in that same context, if you have to compare the cost of a person in say New York, then I think that would at least be 3 to 4 times of that in Mumbai. Even at entry levels, the average salary that a graduate in India gets is around 6 lakhs or maybe 10 lakhs. And if you compare that with average entry salary in New York, that would be at least $60,000, which is, you know, at least seven times more than what they have to pay in a place like Mumbai or anywhere in India. So if I have to think logically, you know, if the skills are comparable, then why will a company hire in a place like New York or London or any of the developed markets? They will definitely prefer Mumbai, and technology has already broken the barriers. So analytics and all these advancements is definitely set to gain with from these things, because as Shrideep was also mentioning about companies like Citibank or JP Morgan Chase, for most of these companies, an expense is an expense. It doesn't matter if they are spending that in a developed market or in a place like India. They will, with these cost benefits that we will have because of our purchasing power, uh, we are definitely set to get a preference in hiring in the future. So while the analytics market will definitely grow in the future, I think Indian market is much better place to take advantage of these growth rather in comparison with most of these developed markets.
Yeah, thank you, Sushant. In fact, number of students are asking queries about where exactly it can gel with specific stream. In fact, at ISBM, we have we have a area of specific areas of specialization wherein student can specialize in the area of business analytics. So I think you can just answer one by one about any specific area that you think that analytics can go, it can be its right match. But what we believe is that business analytics can, like in case of finance, in case of marketing, in case of supply chain also, it has it blends very well. So can you just share with
Yeah.
your own example about the competency that students need to update themselves when they're looking for a specific domain?
Yeah, so I would rather say that I mean, even before I talk about my profession and the importance of business analytics in my profession, I would rather say that there would literally be no field where business analytics and these things will not matter in the future. Soma gave an example of of a telecom company in the Middle East, and all the online games, and also about HR, how it is impacting HR. So there would literally be no, I mean, Shrideep also talked about companies like Amazon Web Services and Ola, Uber. So there would hardly be, I mean, if you would go back in time by say 15 to 20 years, no one would have thought that analytics or data or these technologies would impact taxi business to this extent. Even in case of telecom companies, there are like you talk about any Indian companies also, let it be Airtel or Reliance Jio or Vodafone Idea. There are, all of them have approximately like at least over 40 crore of subscribers. So even if let's take an example of even if let's say for Airtel, if they have 40 crore subscribers, even if each subscriber on an average makes say 3 calls per day, we are talking about a record of 1,000 calls per year for each subscriber. Let us just multiply that with the 40 crore subscriber base that they have. It would be like 40,000 crores of data. So again, as Soma was saying, these are like these dependencies on data is driving these businesses. So more than like data analytics driving a particular sector, the dependencies or the advantages in these sectors are driving the change that we see, that which we see in the analytics business. From my perspective also, business analytics definitely has a huge scope. It has the way I used to analyze. I'm more into risk management, so the way I used to analyze my the trade data and in the stock market in 2008 is very different than the way we are doing it today. We have so many tools. There are so many BI tools as well. you talk about Tableau, Yellow Finance, you talk about ClickView. There are a lot of such companies who are, which is making the job easier. So analytics is definitely, it definitely has a major role in financial services sector as well. And that is also not restricted to risk management alone. It is, talk about, I gave an example of trading as well, where it has made a lot of changes, and it is just creating new and new roles. No one would have thought about managing an automated trading platform around a couple of decades back. So now that is a reality, and that is on high demand as well. And to answer your last question regarding the skill sets required, I would say that we don't know. I mean, 10 years ago, if someone would have asked me about the importance of big data or artificial intelligence or machine learning, I'm not sure if I would have given it so much importance or not. But now they are in. I mean, they are one of the most demand profiles in demand right now, and so I would say that since we do not know what would be coming in the future,
Right.
The only thing that we can do is we can just try and be ahead of the curve. We the hunger that a person should have to learn new things, I think that would define a lot of things, because 15 years ago, when actually, at least when I was in college, we did not have these topics in our curriculum. I have done engineering before MBA. In engineering also, we did not have anything related to big data or artificial intelligence or machine learning. So the only thing is we can just have that eagerness to learn, and we can try to stay ahead of the curve in learning. And I think that would create a lot of opportunity for all of the students.
Right. Soma, there is one question from students, and also professionals, that they're asking about. Many of them are going for online certification. So how to rightly identify a right certification course? Which can those parameters to be considered?
Sure. Thanks, Sushant. I think that's very insightful, from the financial, talking about your financial experience and risk analytics. So Professor Mahesh, I think in terms of, there are a lot of, opportunities today, in terms of application of data. So, so tying it back to the question that you asked previously, so analytics applies to any and every field. It is not industry specific. What we say, it is a horizontal, right? So, it applies to all industries, starting from finance to telecom, a retailer, a retail company, FMCG company, travel company, tourism company. So wherever there is data, it is on the company to make use of the data through scientific methods and techniques. Similarly, if you look at it in terms of the organization inside, the whatever function you talk about, it is a marketing function, sales function, supply chain, finance, HR. So again, it cuts across all functions within an organization. So wherever there is data, it is imperative that you need to use that data to understand what's happening and how the company's products and services can be improved. Now, when in terms of, somebody looking to learn, so again, why I said that, that it is a horizontal is that, your opportunity is so large, you can apply analytics in retail or finance or, in an engineering firms. I think there were some questions on somebody being a civil engineer. Is there an opportunity for me? Now, because even in civil engineering, or even it is in somebody is a microbiology, again, you have data about buildings, construction, or it is, microbiology about, diseases, or, the what do you call virus or bacteria, right? So again, it is about data. Clinical research is such an, important practice where data analytics is used. Now, how do I know what do I learn, right? That is, I think, the question. So what we have to know is that, say, if you're an engineering student, it is not mandatory that you have to have an engineering background. If you're a management student, it is not mandatory that you have to have a statistics background. So it is open to everybody, somebody who comes from a statistics background or an economics or quantitative background, or somebody who is from an engineering background, or somebody who is from a management background. Each of them have options open to them in terms of working in the area of analytics and data science. So what are the skills that are required? I think there are three things that I will want to call out. One is definitely the quantitative skills. Now, somebody who is a statist who has learned statistics or studied statistics, they will have an edge, right? But the others, they would need to pick that up, because it is all about quantitative framework and technique. So mathematics and statistical, a lot of foundation in that. The second pillar that I would like to call out is the the computing skills. So we do not calculate by hand. Nobody in the industry does that. So you have to understand some basics of databases, how data is structured, different tools. Sushant talked about tools like Tableau, ClickView. So these are data visualization tools. Then there are a lot of tools like, say, some are proprietary, some are from the from open source, like you have R, Python. You have say from IBM, there is IBM Watson. From SAP, there are they have their own tools, like say a Leonardo or a predictive analytics. Oracle has its own tool set. So there are a whole lot of tools there. So you are not going to run an algorithm or calculate manually. So you need to again build your skills in the computing related skills in terms of working with data. So whatever quantitative algorithm that we are learning in the quantitative skill, we will apply that or use that using some tools and software. So that's the second pillar. And the third and the most important pillar is business and the business domain, right? Whether it is retail or telecom or finance or risk or supply chain or logistic. So we need to understand it is all about contributing or using data for business. If it doesn't help the business, it is of no use, right? So business is supreme. So understanding the business is very important. So whatever certification program that somebody is looking at, I think they need to look at whether they are getting opportunity to learn learn these three skills in terms of building up on your quantitative skills, in terms of building up on your computing skills, as well as are you getting enough opportunity to work with data, case studies to understand the business problem. Right. So because when we work with organization, that is the most important thing, understanding and mapping the business problem and then translating that business problem to an analytics problem. So if you do not understand business, or if you do not have the patience of really going through and sitting with the business stakeholders to understand what are the pain or issues in the business, you will never be able to translate that in terms of data. You will never be able to understand what data is available, what is not available, the data, whole issue of data traceability, which is again very, very important, right? So when somebody is looking for getting into this area in terms of building up on skills, all these three are very, very important. So you should look for programs where you can build on it. And trust me, it is not important that you have to come from a engineering background or a statistics background, because I said about three skills. So statisticians will have only the quantitative skill, but what about the others? The others are equally important, right? If somebody coming from an engineering background or a computing background, they are very comfortable with the programming language or the databases. But what about the quantitative skills? So so you need to pick up skills for all three.
Right.
That is how you need to evaluate a program that you would want to sign in for.
Yeah, Shreedip, can you just share your opinion?
Yeah, so I can add two things. I mean, Soma covered everything mostly in terms of areas which we need to focus or which a student should be look into while picking up the course. But I mean, most important thing which Soma touched upon is to understand the business. So I mean, you come from a retail background, you come from a tourism, hotel industry, or you come from a finance background. You pick up, so let's say PGDM in finance or PGDM in marketing, or for that matter, PGDM in business analytics. So each of these disciplines will basically will teach you the ingrained domain expertise which you need to have to understand the basics of business. So that is one, to do that and to pick that course rightly. And then on top of that, something which now the market is kind of looking into, especially when it comes to hiring and recruitment, what the new age recruiters are looking is in terms of how have you built your technological stack. When I say technological stack, in terms of what are your other skills in terms of technology. I gave an example when I started my conversation that cloud is something that is that's kind of a changed the way business used to operate, especially in terms of financial services. So how do you understand? I mean, it could be a simple thing. So there was a question from a guy that he's a BCom graduate, and what could be his career path in terms of he wants to pursue something in analytics. So I can probably add on to that, a BCom graduate. So you have been exposed with the finance or the accounts perspective of how the things work. So now you may supplement that with a good MBA course in finance, understand the nuances of finance and business, and couple that with some technological skills, which could be anything. It could be related to understanding how SQL works, how data query works, how database works, or pursuing something, a cloud certification from maybe AWS or Google for that matter, to understand basics of cloud, how the technology works. So it's very important to understand the business aspects, which of course your domain or the program which you enroll into will give, of course, and add on to that the technology skills which you have to build on your own. Some colleges do provide that, some colleges do give a push, but on the other hand, you have to work on your own. I mean, there was a question in the Q&A section. Somebody is asking, honest question, tell me how to get a job fast in a foreign country. I mean, if you ask me honestly, I'll tell, get a PR, pack some money and go to the foreign country and invest there and look out for a job. But that's not the thing that we are aiming for in the webinar. We're trying to understand how business, how data, how analytics, and how technology are all coupling up and changing the way the entire industry or entire globe functions. So for that, to make ourselves equipped with that, we need to understand business technology. And also, I mean, in your PGDM program finance, you will come across some very raw concepts. I mean, those are very good in terms of understanding to build your basics. But when you come down out of the course, when you land up in a job, you may not see them directly applying to. So then there are other certification programs around your domain. If you're picking up finance, I can probably suggest, like Sushant has done FRM, I suppose. So you have several professional certificates, like I'm pursuing CFA. So this kind of certifications will add on to what you have learned. And also these are ingrained in the construct is as per the market. So what market aspect? So you need to build on that aspect as well. So you need to pick up the certifications aligned to your domain, whichever domain you pick. It could be finance or retail, or it could be marketing for that matter. And then you have to build your technological stack, and of course you have to read a lot. So this is something very basic that every one of us should do. Read what is happening outside us, what is changing in the industry. That is very much important. Yeah, so that's pretty much.
Yeah, so domain is important. Based on domain, you have to use your knowledge of domain, especially in understanding the business, and that will take ahead in use specific analytics in trying to give a solution to a specific problem. Sushant, can you just share some example wherein the domain knowledge has helped you in giving, trying to understand the problem and using analytics in giving a solution?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, so I'm into so I deal majorly with hedge funds, which are primarily located in New York and London, and some of the audience would know that they are, the most complicated kind of setup. Like they believe that they can trade anything and everything over anywhere. So the job sometimes becomes very challenging because of the nature of the business, the complications involved, and analytics, at least I think, has helped me bridge that gap to a large extent. Especially, I mean, in line with what Soma was mentioning earlier. So it is, the business analytics tools as well. So they have added a lot of value to the way our analysis was getting done earlier, and the speed of that as well, with the quality it brings to the table. So I think that is one thing which I'll say that has helped me a lot in my profession, at least if you have to ask me. And that has literally changed the way we used to work earlier. And definitely there are a few certifications as well, which are a few things are relevant to specific fields for me. There is something like FRM, PRM. All those are relevant for my business. With respect to business analytics as well, there are a lot of certifications available in the market. I mean, I think what the way Soma explained about how to choose a particular certification, I think that would be helpful as well, to choose a particular certification and complete it with an eye on the market and the business, and how it would add value to the business.
Yeah. Sushant is, I think, is a student, is passed up from ISBM.
Yeah. Proud of being an ISBM. I mean,
yeah.
One more thing I would like to say in this regard. I think, see, like in my business also, we keep on hiring a lot of people from IIT Bombay. That is my favorite hunting ground, if I can say that. I've been hiring from IIT Bombay for the last 7 years, and I feel there is a when it comes, I saw a question with respect to talent gap from someone someone has asked me. So the engineers would definitely would not know about the field of financial services sector, but I always think that it really doesn't matter. It all that matters for a person is the hunger to learn, because understanding a business or some topics can be bridged in a matter of 2 to 3 months. Nothing is a rocket science, and the same learning is something which I got from ISBNM also. There are a few things which ISBNM taught me, and I mean, they were obviously one of those things was that hunger to learn and to remain ahead of the curve. That is one thing which I definitely cherish and I've taken away from ISBNM. Apart from the way we keep on creating more streets people, which is again one important thing if one has to be more successful in the corporate sector. So since you have mentioned about being alumni, I would definitely would want to add these two factors, which I have cherished a lot being an ISBMI.
Yeah, thank you, Sushant. Last question to Soma. You just mentioned about companies are basically when they're taking distance interview, they are using basic number of softwares in terms trying to analyze students' performance in the interview. Can you just tell students to which specific skills they have to focus when they're basically giving interviews through, I mean to say, a distance interview, which is much more different than I mean to say, the regular interviews.
In terms of interview as such, so I think
almost complete.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go
on. So what I think Sushant said is very, very important. Whatever field you are in, your hunger to learn. I think that basically separates one from the the rest of the crowd, I would say. So in an interview, I think that is what needs to come out. You may not know the answer of any and every question, right? A lot of times it will happen like that, and not only at an entry level, even when you go up the career, your career, graph. So when you do not know that, that the approach or your attitude that I may not know that, but then I will find out and I'll invest my time to learn if that is important for the role. So I think that is something which needs to come out. And in terms of skill, whatever it is, whether it is analytics or a data science interview, or if it is for a finance job, or it is a technology role, whatever that is, it's a marketing role. See, I think it's very, very important to focus on fundamentals. I think, any interviewer in any organization, and I'll go with Sushant.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying.
That, a skill can be learned, but your basic attitude in terms of, my interest, my attitude, those are very individualistic and ingrained in oneself. So if you can really bring that up in terms of, when you are facing an interview, that the fundamentals, and because you are very clear about the fundamentals, obviously through your interview question, the interviewer will check that, whether it is your marketing or HR or whatever field, whatever specialization or engineering field that you are in. So if you can answer the fundamental, questions correctly, and then whatever it is extra that you may not know, but then if you can show your willingness and that, and your positive attitude that you can learn, and that really gives a lot of confidence to the interviewer in terms of picking up the right candidate for the role that they have in mind. And also I think projects are very, very important. So for a new fresher, say passing out whether from an engineering college or a management college, whatever projects that you have done, and today in the internet world, there are a whole lot of data courses available. So apart from what is being taught, if somebody thinks that I will learn only based on what is being taught to me in my college curriculum, I think then you are in for a rude shock. Because today, because colleges will also have to follow certain university guideline, university curriculum. So you have a fixed curriculum. But if you are interested in, say, analytics, if you are interested in, financial world, if you're interested in supply chain, function, then it is your, idea and your interest to find out more about it and get into depth. Because a lot of information is available on the net. Either you would take a paid certification program, or you go through use those information to work on caselets, work on small projects, so that you can complement whatever you are learning in a structured curriculum in a university or a college. Because that is what will again give you an edge, that over and above what has been taught to you in your college university curriculum, what have you done? Right? How have you used your time?
Right. Yeah, thank you, Soma. I think Dr. Jayaraman, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you just
Finally,
before we
My video is, I have to start my video.
Yeah. No, okay, start. You can ask the question. We will be.
Can you just unmute my video, please?
Yeah. We can see you, sir.
Oh my God, what technology can do to you. I really learned it today. See, we are the digital migrants. That's the problem. And there are all those digital natives sitting in front of me, and I can see that they can able to get on. And I don't know, I had a real tough time. Anyway, I've been listening to a lot of your conversation, and very much have, I want to say, actually want this, maybe I'll take about 5 minutes to set a certain amount of what you call things that I really wanted to hang and bring into the discussion. You talked a lot about what's happening in the data analyst field. You also talked about skill. You also talked about what's happening in your organizations. Okay, now I'm going to change the topic a little bit more, because the whole idea, what we're trying to do is to what you call, how does analytics actually impact work? If you see right from the first industrial revolution to the second industrial revolution, third industrial revolution, every revolution actually transformed society. You bring in better things. It made the first industrial revolution move from human beings to machines. Second industrial revolution brought in a huge amount of mass production. Factories started, our life started changing. And the third industrial revolution, of course, ICT, what we typically call information, communication, and technology, advent of the internet, changed everything. Now we are on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, right? And so that, I think, the drivers of change here, of course, mobile computing, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and whatnot. I'm going to check to put the talk, but what we will discuss right now, how exactly it is. I'm going to share a few slides which I want to show you. Share with you a screen. Just a minute. Can I share screen, please? Can I, Mahesh, you have to allow me to share the screen. Hello. Hello. Mahesh, you have to allow me to share the screen. I'm not able to share screen. I want to show you. Oh my God. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make, this is, oh my God, this is really frustrating. The host has disabled my share screen. Just a minute. Just a minute. The point I was trying to make to you is, if you really look at it, in 2018, according to the World Economic Forum the Future of Jobs report, it says in 2018 about 28% of what we call machines will actually take over man-made jobs, And then by 2022 to 25, we see that increasing a lot more, and a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence will be taking up a huge of tasks which people have been doing. Does it really mean that we're going to lose jobs? No, not really. There is a pessimistic view that more and more technology will make people lose jobs. But it's not true. If you look at the next slide, according to the same report, many jobs will be, there's a huge amount of skills disruption will be happening. Average disruption, according to them, in countries like India and China will be close to around 44%, 50 to 45%. Now, in that kind of a scenario, what are the jobs that you'll not like to continue? Maybe in future, some of these jobs that you will not see, which are clerical in nature, which people are doing, or is routine in nature. And they are the kind of jobs that will get automated, right? The new kind of jobs which are coming up, the data analyst, the machine learning specialist, and the business analyst, these are the kind of new jobs that are coming.
I think sir went on mute.
There is some disturbance in the, yeah. Sushant, can we just summarize before we part away?
Yeah,
so
sure.
One of the last sentences.
Yeah.
From each one of you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say that we are living in an exponential time. It's not just a changing world. The rate of change is in itself is huge. And I've worked with a variety of setups from NBFCs to large investment banks to the complicated world of hedge funds. And I've seen that with advancement of technology, when that gets combined with analytics, it is the overall structure is changing at a much greater pace. So if I have to sum all these things up, then I would say that these things will end up bringing a lot of new jobs in the future, jobs and roles which we don't even know that they exist or anything as of today. So there is no need to panic, which we see in a lot of students these days. It is indeed an opportunity, and we need to take advantage of that by simply staying ahead of the curve by as much as we can. The competition is stiff, definitely, yes, but yeah, the eagerness to learn new things, if we can combine that with our internal hunger, I think we have the most important tool which is required to succeed in this changing time. And it is definitely a clear opportunity for all of us, not only students, with all the working professionals like me or anyone else. It is definitely a great opportunity in store for all of us.
Shridip, yeah.
So I would like to conclude by saying one thing, that the students need to keep themselves abreast with the technology, what is happening in the world. Picking up right course is of course important, but as Soma rightly pointed out, that some of the concepts which you learn, and of course the college has to abide by the university norms. So you may have to put that into the course where it might be not that much relevant in the coming future or in the coming times. But you need to do that. I mean, you have to pursue a curriculum, you have to come up with a degree or certificate. But the point is, at the end of the day, how you are keeping yourself, well versed with the technological aspects, the advancement which is happening. So building on skills is very important. And when you pick up a certification, there was a question on there are many certifications in the market when it comes to data science. So I don't come from a data science background, but in particular, but we do work with data analysts a lot in our day-to-day work. So the courses, when you pick up, you need to see two aspects which I see are very important. The first aspect is of course, the affiliation of the course. So let's say you have you're pursuing some particular machine learning program. Now you will see the affiliations. Let's say IIT Bombay is providing a program on machine learning. So that makes it a catchy because the brand is there. And the second important part which you need to look upon, apart from the brand, which is more important, to dive into the curriculum, because they all expose the curriculum to you on the website these days. You need to look into that. What are they covering? And as Soma pointed out, the projects and the case studies are very much important in order to keep ourselves more, ahead of the curve. So you need to look at the curriculum, what they are going to cover, how that is going to help me. I mean, I do understand a person who is coming, like there was a question from a non-IT engineer, how he wants to start a field in data analytics. So of course, that person needs to have some ground and of course help from some other who is an expert in the field. But in general, that is how you should actually look at a certificate at a program. Affiliation and the content of the program, what it is going to teach you. A mere certification, if you do it at the end of the day, I mean, trust me, if you go out on the interview, you will be nailed or you will be simply exposed, because that's not going to help. So it's very much important what you learn out of it. What are they covering? Is it going to help you? So that is something you need to explore. So this is something. Certification on top of what curriculum or what program you pick as a PGDM, that is something up to you. And second, keeping yourself ahead, or probably I would say in line with the technological advancement that the world is progressing. That is very much important. So that's how I'll probably advise the students.
Yeah, Suma.
Yeah. Okay. I think in conclusion and summary, what I would like to say is that a little different from what Shrideep and Sushant said. So technology will come and go. We will see we are in an area, in an age where there will be better, improved, more technologies, more languages. Earlier it was on-premise deployment of software. Today it is cloud, which has completely revolutionized the way companies work and store data and information. So that will only improve. But what is not going to go away is that is the data, because more and more we are generating and consuming data. So I think in my experience, even when I was in management college, I would see some people who will be who will run away when you talk about quantitative things or data. That approach probably is not going to help you today. Yeah, because data is pervasive. It's part of each and every function. So you need to inculcate that attitude towards, even if you don't love it, you have to inculcate the attitude to at least work with it, because it's not that everybody will be working as an analyst or a data scientist. A lot of people will be users of data. So you need to understand those reports. You need to make use of that information for your function. So what a data scientist or a data analyst has developed a model and given that, and that has changed the, let's say, a risk analytics function. Now the risk analysts and they, maybe the sales and marketing team, out of that campaign, they will now, communicate with finally the customers. It's not the data scientist who will be communicating to the end customer, right? So each and every person needs to, have that, what I call data savviness, right? So understanding that, and that is why only the hard skill is not going to help somebody. There is the hard skill in terms of a programming language or understanding statistics or machine learning algorithm. Yes, those are required, but at the same time, in an organization, you also need to communicate your findings. The aspect, what we say, storytelling, right? The change management, because finally, this is all about change, right? So how an organization handles change, and as an employee or as a stakeholder, how am I part of that change? How am I contributing to that change? Or otherwise I'll get obsolete, right? So, so keeping in, developing that data savviness, that eagerness, that, hunger to learn, that is something, which is going to stay always. But technology, the tools will keep on changing. And, if you are really interested, then you'll have to find, what is now, in the market, what is being used by different companies. So when I'm picking up a course, then am I learning the right, tool or technology which is being used by most of the companies, and so on. Thank you.
So Mahesh, just one thing to add on what Soma said. So yeah, technology of course changes. So I would like to say one last thing, that it's very much important to inculcate the attitude of learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yes.
That is what the mantra is. So as she rightly pointed out, today it is cloud, tomorrow maybe some other thing, maybe space, we don't know. But the point is, we have to relearn and unlearn whatever we have. We have to unlearn that, we have to relearn. So we have to inculcate that habit. And once we have that, I mean, that can take us through. But that is very much important. It's no matter what technology, what domain, what business, we need to have that attitude to build on something. Yeah.
Thank you. It was very insightful discussion that we had today. Thank you, Soma Banerjee. Thank you, Sridip Sarkar. Thank you, Sushant Maji. Thank you all of you for this insightful discussion and the insight that you have given to our attendees. We have more than 700 registrants, and this webinar was live on Facebook as well and other social media platform. Thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.